Hi, I'm Dr. Wade McNair. In this video, we're going to talk a little bit about organizational psychology and some of the things that I'm passionate about. My experience having 20 years working in org psychology, the opportunity to teach at a number of universities, both at the undergraduate and graduate level, the education that I have in a master's and doctorate in organizational psychology. And there's some things that I've learned and I've communicated in classrooms, but I've been asked to put into video. So this is that video. I often get asked, Wade, what brought you into org psych? And the reality is I grew up with the desire to be a therapist. I was going to change the world one patient at a time, and I was going to be that therapist. I was in an undergraduate class, and it was called Therapeutic Techniques, and master's students were asked to come in, and we were asked to do diagnosis and work in therapy, and I hated it. I was frustrated. I was agitated. And I remember when the prof came over to me and said, Wade, what's going on? You just look so frustrated. And I said, all I want to do is tell these patients, you know what? Here's where you are. Here's where you want to go. Let's go ahead and put a plan together and get it going. I don't want to know how your mom treated you when you were 10. And my professor went, well, maybe, Wade, therapy is not where you should be spending your time and effort. So I went to my advisor and said, hey, I have a minor in business and a major in psychology. Let's flip them because ultimately therapy is not what I want to go into. And my therapist asked me, or my advisor asked me and said, Wade, I want you to take this class. It's a class called Industrial Organizational Psychology with Ron Smedley. And you know, I took that class, and that one class forever changed the course of my life. And it was taught by a man who has taught me incredible lessons. And I have seen those lessons over the past 25 years consistently reinforce and have had some ideas that I've then communicated out as well. And I want to share some of those ideas with you. The first one is the idea of a core value. What is it that defines who you are? For me, after much search and going through a lot of different trials and tribulations in my own world, I found that word to be the word authenticity. Authenticity is my core value, and I bring that up because everybody's core values were a little bit different. But for me, the answer to the question, why is Wade here? It's to live and help others live authentic lives. So how do we define authenticity? How do I know that what I'm doing is having an impact? How do I know that I'm living authentically? And I've spent years researching this and have come out with what I call the Authenticity Equation. The Authenticity Equation, ironically, came to me in an algebraic formula. Now, for those of you that know me at all, realize I don't do numbers. I cannot add, subtract, or multiply in my head. That's why we have iPhones and calculators. So for me, the idea that an algebraic equation is at the core of who I am, I found quite entertaining. So let's go back to fourth grade algebra for just a moment. And we know that there's an algebraic equation that something's on one side has to equal something on the other. So if I had, for example, the number 4 on this side of the equation, I can have a number of different ways to get to 4 on this side. It could be 2 plus 2. It could be 8 minus 4. It could be the square root of 16. Number of different ways that they can be expressed. But ultimately, each side has to equal. And that's fundamental to understanding this idea of authenticity, because the authenticity equation simply is AB equals AB. AB equals AB. Well, that lends us to the question that says, okay, well, what do these A's and B's stand for? So the first one is assumptions and beliefs. I often ask the students in my class and when I'm speaking in organizations, what's the difference between an assumption and a belief? And really what it comes down to is a belief is a chosen conscious set of values, ideals, and beliefs that are consciously chosen. Assumptions are often those things that are unconsciously believed. So for example, I grew up in Canada, and growing up in Canada, I have a definition of what cold means. What amazes me living in Southern California, that it will be 65 degrees, and at Disneyland, you know, everybody's wearing hats and gloves and jackets, and my parents come up from Canada, and they're wearing shorts and flip-flops and a t-shirt because there's some assumptions on what the word cold means that are very different between my parents and the folks that are living here in Southern California. If you're in another state or another nation, you can understand that sometimes these simple words can have such a profound impact on what we believe to be true. And so assumptions are those unconscious beliefs. Beliefs are those chosen assumptions. So if we have assumptions and beliefs on this side of the equation, we have to ask ourselves, what does that mean on the other side? And it means actions and behaviors. When we think about actions and behaviors, we have to ask ourselves that same question that we asked on this side of what's the difference between an action and a behavior? I often like to tell the story of myself. I'm pretty much a nonviolent guy. I care about everyone. I try to live my life as peaceful as possible. But you know what? If you're a stranger and you come up and I'm with my daughter and you threaten my daughter, trust me, I will not be a peaceful individual to you. I will do whatever it takes to protect that which is important to me. And that may be that moment, that action, but that's not who I am behaviorally. Actions are moments in time based on the situationality of what's happening in that moment. Behaviors are the pattern of actions over time. Often we get judged by actions when we should be looking at behaviors, but don't negate the fact that we still are responsible for those actions, even in that moment. So the authenticity equation says that my assumptions and my beliefs equal my actions and my behaviors, which means, flip it the other way, my actions and behaviors are directly related to the assumptions and beliefs that I have, and the assumptions and beliefs that I have are influencing my actions and my behaviors. One of the assignments that I have in my classes is I ask students for a period of 7 days, for a whole week, that they need to track their time. What do they do every 30 minutes from the moment they wake up to the moment they go to sleep? And they collect this data. And at the end of that week of collecting data, they're required to go through this analysis process to say, okay, so what? So what does this mean? What does this show about me? This entire week's worth of data of actions and behaviors, what does that tell me about what my beliefs and assumptions are? Tells you what's most important, because what we spend our most time on are the things we feel are most important. It tells us our relationships. It tells us the tasks. It tells us a lot about how we use our time. Another way to look at whether your AB equals your AB is take a look at your checkbook. What's in your checkbook? If you're spending 50% of your disposable income at Disneyland, then that obviously means that Disneyland's a high importance to you. And I'm, by the way, a Disneyland annual pass holder, and I will tell you that one of the beliefs in my life is that Disneyland is a key component of my happiness. Therefore, you will see me at Disneyland once a week. So the question here of authenticity is not whether I agree with your assumptions and beliefs or whether I agree with your actions or behavior, but it's whether you understand what your assumptions and beliefs are and that you can determine whether or not they're in alignment with your actions and behaviors. You know, one of the things I get asked, Wade, is there are so many differing views in organizations and individuals, in religion and politics and all of these different things. How do you look at people as an organizational psychologist? And my personal view is quite simple. If you are a human being, you deserve to be treated with dignity, compassion, integrity, and respect simply because you breathe. And because you breathe, you are worthy of love and belonging. That's foundational to who I am. And that fits as one of my beliefs. So I then need to look at my actions and behaviors and say, does that translate? Is there equality on either side of this equation? And if so, then I'm aligned. I am authentic. If not, then I have a choice to make. Do I make changes to my actions and my behaviors, or do I make changes to my assumptions and beliefs? This is a process of self-awareness. This is the process by which we get to understand who we are. Changing your actions and behaviors. Well, guess what? If I'm going on a diet, there's something I'm going to have to start eating less of, and that would be chocolate. And I'd have to start eating more of green stuff. So if that's the case, I'd actually have to change my shopping behaviors to align with the belief that I need to be in better health. Or I can say, no, I'm going to keep eating chocolate, and my belief is I'm fine just the way I am. In both of those scenarios, it is up to me to make that choice. And if I'm being authentically me, then I have an opportunity to truly delve into all that I was created with purpose to be. And my role and responsibility is to treat everyone else with dignity, compassion, integrity, and respect simply because they breathe and help them understand this equation. Often we look at this equation and we say, well, how does this relate to our interactions with other people? Great question. Here's how I kind of look at it. I look at this as a lens. And you know, when we look out to the world, we have our own perspective. And we're looking out to the world based on our perspective, where when people are looking at us, they have a perception of who we are. Now, let's ask the question. If someone has a perception of who you are, is that based on actions and behaviors or assumptions and beliefs? Well, a perception can only be based on your actions and behaviors because those people aren't inside your head. They don't know your belief system, your ideology, your assumptions that make you think the way you think. Have you ever sent a text message to somebody and you're meaning it to be funny? It's a funny text message you're sending. And somehow, between you sending it and them receiving it, it became something upsetting to that other person. They misread that text. And the first thing you say when they call you up and say, I can't believe you said that, is you say, I didn't mean that. That wasn't what I meant. But to them, they're reading what you wrote, the words versus the intent. Intention comes from assumption and beliefs. What our external perceptions, how people perceive us to be, is based on our actions and our behaviors. So in the large scale of things, we have to ask ourselves a very simple question. And that question is this: Does my AB equal my AB? And the challenge we have in the complexity of human nature is all of us will have areas where it doesn't align. And that's a constant journey of self-awareness to find those and to become more in alignment with our authenticity. The challenge we have is when people make decisions to actually be okay with that not aligning. And what that causes internally for an individual is this internal conflict, challenges, self-worth, issues, and doubt. Organizations, it causes impacts to the whole world. If you've got an organization that has their values of integrity, yet they're doing practices that are undermining and unethical that have a negative impact on the global economy, you've got to ask the question, is that an authentic organization? If I'm part of a group of people, whatever that group of people may be, and they say, here are the beliefs that we have, but yet I look at their actions and behaviors and they don't align, then I've got to question whether or not I belong in that group. It's not my responsibility to tell other people that they're authentic or not. It's my responsibility to live and help others live authentic lives, whereby your actions and behaviors are in alignment with your assumptions and beliefs. That's individually, that's in a group, and that's organizationally as well. So this is the authenticity equation. It's something that has profoundly changed the way that I look at myself as a psychologist, as an employee, as a father, as a teacher. These are things that have transformed who I am to be and my authenticity. You know, one of the things that we often have in life is we have these two roles that we play. So this is one equation, but we get to look at it through the lens of two roles. And I want to tell you those roles are participant and observer. Not only do we have perspective and perception going on with our assumptions and beliefs, but we have the role of participant. And we have the role of observer. And the best way to discuss that is to think about, how are you living your life? Are you actively participating in your life? Are you aware of what's going on in the moment and how you're feeling and how you're experiencing? Are you present in the life that you're living? And are you also an observer? Are you able to take that step back from the table and look at all of the amazing things that are happening around you and see how different patterns play into the larger scheme of life? Being able to be both participant and observer are important roles for us to truly live authentic lives. I like to use the example of the teacups ride at Disneyland. And if you think about the teacups ride at Disneyland, you've got this big cup that you sit in with your friends. And at the center of the teacup, there's this wheel. And you turn the wheel, and the faster you turn that wheel, the faster the teacup spins. And you get a bunch of friends in there, and you're there to have fun with your friends. But when you get into that teacup, all of a sudden, your sole view becomes the center of that wheel. And many people in participant role end up spending 100% of their focus on that ride, focusing on how to turn the teacup, how to make it go faster, how to continue to just focus on making that go faster. But then there's some folks in your teacup that they're spinning and they're laughing, but they lift up their head and they look and connect with the others in the teacup and laughing, connection. And they start to take a wider view and they start to see that there's other teacups going around and there's other people having fun. And by taking and lifting their head up above that focus of just today to take a look and see the amazing things that are happening all around them, they're allowing themselves to be an observer. Now, are there extremes of each one? Yes, there are extremes of each level. There are extreme observers who sit out and watch life go by and never ever participate. And there are participants that are so enthralled in their own world and their own things that nobody else means anything to them. What I'm talking about is blending these two skill sets. The ability to be present, to be a human being, not a human doing. To be able to be in the moment and appreciate everything that's happening and seeing the vibrancy of life happening around you. But then also being able to take a step back and see that there's so much more to life than just you. Participant in the world, spinning the wheel. Observer, stepping back and acknowledging the greatness of our reality. Authenticity, aligning our assumptions and our beliefs with our actions and our behaviors. Who are you being? And ultimately, that's the question that I wrestled with. And about 10 years ago, it came to me in my research and in my life's journey that for me, that core value was authenticity. And you know what? The question I'm going to ask you today, as whether you are celebrating life as a teenager, as a middle-ager, as a wisdom person at the end of life, who are you being? What will you be known for? What is your legacy? And the more clearly you can articulate that, trust me, the more you're able to make great decisions. So I'm going to share with you what mine are. My mission, my calling, why I believe I am here, my cause is to live and help others live authentic lives, where our assumptions and beliefs equal our actions and behaviors individually and organizationally, personally and professionally. That we live a life that balances our participation in every moment and being present while also acknowledging the greatness that is out there in relationships and life. It is about treating every person with dignity, compassion, integrity, and respect simply because they breathe, and the reality that because they breathe, they deserve love and belonging. How do I know if I'm going to be successful? What are my success criteria? Well, they're simply this. The end of my life, what I want people to say about me is that I lived authentically, that I loved unconditionally, that I laughed wholeheartedly, that I learned continuously, that I led courageously. That's who I want to be. Who do you want to be? Does your AB equal your AB? What's your calling? What's your cause? And I challenge you to ask these questions now, because this is the best time to do so. Being better today than yesterday, being better tomorrow than today. It's something we can all seek to live up to and grow into. Thank you.